Good morning, everybody. It's me, DB. Hope you're doing good. I just started reflecting today, and so I realized that in order for me to start making some of this content with the hopes of teaching some people about God, and as I mentioned in the process, being able to teach myself, I really started thinking that in order for anybody to even want to listen to me, I think it's important for you to understand a part of my story as well. And so today I took you to a very important place in my story. And so if you look behind me, you can see a nice big building. So it's an old church building. And I'll get to that part of the story in a moment. But for this part of my life, I was about 13 or 14 years old. And I'll spare you most of these details for now, but basically my mom and my stepdad at the time were at the beginning stage of going through a divorce, which really left us in a pretty tough situation. And so as a result, we were put in a spot where we were living in a hotel downtown. It was called the Plaza Hotel. It's a single occupancy unit type of hotel, so it's a very small room. And at the time it was my mom, my brother, and I, and we were all sharing this small hotel room. And the Plaza Hotel, it was really the type of place where, you know, a lot of criminals lived, people that were just getting out of prison and didn't have many options, a lot of drug addicts and sex offenders and these types of people. At the time, you couldn't even get into the Plaza Hotel if you were not 18, but the managers at the hotel, from talking with my mom, knew that we were in a pretty tough spot, and by the grace of God, they allowed us to stay there. And so my brother, my mom, and I were all living there. My sister at the time was mostly living with her dad. And so my brother and I were living in this tough spot. I mean, really a rough place. And the part of the story that I wanted to tell you today is that when we were living in this hotel, I mean, a place that really should have been a bad place for us. I mean, a lot of people would really consider this like the belly of the beast, just a rough place. And my mom did everything she can to make sure that it was still filled with love. And, you know, my brother and I, we still had each other to look out for each other, but we were young. You know, I was about 13. My brother was 14 or 15. And at the time, at the front desk, there was a man there. His name was Doug. And Doug had also lived a rough life, but he used to look out for us and give us orange juices and things like that when we needed. And one day my brother and I were in the room, and we got a phone call up to our hotel room, which was on the 5th floor of the Plaza Hotel. So Doug says, "Come down to the lobby. I've got somebody I want to introduce you to." And so my brother and I, we went downstairs like, you know, I wonder who wants to meet us. This is interesting. And so when we went down to the lobby, there was a man down there, and he said, "Hey guys, you know, I just wanted to come by and introduce myself to you. I know you're kind of living in this tough situation, but my name is Pastor Pete, and I'm the youth pastor at this church up the street. And every Wednesday, we feed the homeless, and we have a youth group meeting where, you know, people your age come and we meet up and we talk about Jesus and feed the homeless. And, you know, I'd love for you to come. And, you know, by the way, there's free food." And so, you know, for two hungry young boys, that was like the ticket for us. We said, free food? You know, I love free food. And so we started going to church on Wednesdays, really not necessarily even as a way of trying to seek Jesus, but really as a way of being able to get a hot meal, and also as a way to meet people that were our age. So like I mentioned, where we were living, there was nobody our age, and so it was nice to be able to have that type of environment. But long story short, this building behind me is where I first started going to church when I was 13 and 14 years old. And so right now it's an abandoned church, but still for me it has a lot of significance. And so I really wanted to bring you to this place and to start kind of unraveling parts of my testimony. And so that way you can kind of get a little feel of where I came from as we move forward with these stories and these teachings and wherever God is going to lead us on this journey. And just talking about that story, it really reminded me of a story in the Bible where it says that God would leave the 99 sheep to find the one sheep that went astray. And although at the time I was a kid and I hadn't necessarily gone astray per se, I was lost. And at the time, God knew that I was lost, but he also knew that he wasn't going to leave me that way. And so I didn't have to seek God. God himself sent somebody to the Plaza Hotel to come and find me. And so as a result, that's when I started going to the church that you see right here behind me. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're going through some challenges and you feel like maybe God has given up on you, I would encourage you to just remember that God has not given up on you, and that even if you feel like you are lost, he will always seek you out and find you. You know, as I'm standing here in front of the old abandoned church that I used to go to as a kid, I can't help but think about the Bible where it says we find glory in the suffering. And even though at the time I didn't really think I was suffering, I know there was still a lot of suffering that was taking place in my life at that time. And in Romans 5:3-4, it says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope." So in a way, God took that suffering that I was going through as a child, living in the Plaza Hotel, coming to this church behind me on Wednesdays, and he traded that suffering for perseverance, character, and hope. So any perseverance, character, and hope that I have is a result of some of the suffering that I was going through at the time, and some of the different trials that I was facing as a young kid, really just trying to find my way. And I'm just so thankful that God didn't abandon me in that place, and he really sent somebody that was doing his work to meet me in the darkness that I was in at the time, and to invite me to come to this church that you see behind me. And then now, almost 22 years later or so, the same pastor that was my youth pastor at this church behind me, he's now my current pastor at the church that I go to, and he had the opportunity to marry my wife and I, also to do our premarital counseling with him and his wife, and then also we recently just did a dedication for our baby Benjamin. And so you can really see how God has been faithful and really brought my family full circle. So in a sense, he traded my ashes for beauty, and that's just part of my testimony that I wanted to share with you guys. And you know, as I was living in that rough place as a kid, I just can't help but reflect on Psalms 91:4, where it says, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge." So even during that dark time in my life, I was always under the protection of the wing of God, and I'm just very thankful that he has always been faithful for me. And you know, I encourage you as well that if you're going through anything difficult, maybe you're, you know, living in a rough situation, you don't know how you're going to make ends meet, you don't know how you're going to provide for your family, I just want to encourage you that God has not forgotten about you, and he will send somebody to find you. Also, for us that believe in Jesus, remember, we are the ones that he will send to find somebody else that needs help. So if you have a friend that's struggling, or you know, needs some encouragement, just be that person that God sends to rescue somebody and lift them out of that darkness today. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to that story. And for this new year, let's be the change that we want to see, and let's continue to do God's work, and let's continue to be doers of the word, not just hearers of the word. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.